Everything that we've said we forget about, we do it again.
Well, yeah, we can absolutely do it again. Let me get my intro real quick.
You're going to have to shut up or I'm going to have you arrested.
We're going to have a little fun tonight. We're going to talk about some terrible things, but we'll have fun anyway.
It'll feel like 10 times the best orgasm. Come on, join us, plug in. It's going to happen.
Welcome to the Anti-Partisan on NoPartySystem.com. I am the Anti-Partisan, John Means, and today I'm joined by Professor Walter Block, an eminent professor and anarcho-capitalist theorist. He currently holds the William E. Worth Eminent Scholar Endowed Chair in Economics at the J. Butt School of Business at Layola University, and he's a senior fellow of the Ludwig von Mises Institute. Thank you so much for joining me today, Professor. Now, we had a little glitch and we're starting over, so I'm sorry if we repeat ourselves here a little bit in the beginning, but you're probably best known for your book, Defending the Undefendable, which is an amazing book, a textbook in libertarianism. I read it in the 90s when I was coming into more of my political awareness beyond just being autistically anti-authoritarian. And I think it's a great book for people who claim to be libertarian these days, who don't seem quite so sure on what those values really are. And I thought it was really interesting. I'd been thinking about the book about a year back when the gender bathroom issues came up, because you are speaking at one point about a gentleman's club in New York that was forced to accept women, and you made this facetious comparison of, would we consider it discrimination having separate bathrooms for men and women? And here we are 40 years later, and it's an actual issue now. Just crazy. We're in the Twilight Zone, I think.
76, and here's a second one that came out, I think, in 1993, and I'm now working on a third one. Each of these has different characters. In the first one that came out in 76, I was trying a reductio ad absurdum. I was assuming that it's ridiculous to have bathrooms. In 1976, there were no bathrooms where a man could go into a woman's bathroom and not get arrested for it. And I was saying that if we applied this logic, we would have to apply it to bathrooms. And I've been overtaken by events, as you quite correctly point out, that nowadays these people want to have men go into women's bathrooms, and I guess women go into men's bathrooms, and it's it's hard to have a reductio ad absurdum.
Yeah, when everything's just absurdum now.
Yes.
Now another thing, when I was making contact to reach out with you, it really dawned on me, you are one of the first academics in this century to be attacked by this new bubblegum Bolshevism. These social justice warriors. I believe that was in 2009. Can you kind of recap what happened then?
Yeah, well, Tom DiLorenzo invited me, a friend of mine, a colleague, co-author. We have a book together, published together, and he invited me to a sister school. I'm at Loyola University, New Orleans, which is a Jesuit school, and he's at Loyola University, Maryland, which is also a Jesuit school. So he invited me to give a speech on the male-female income differences. Why is it that men earn more than women? And I gave a very traditional neoclassical view that it's all based on productivity or marginal revenue product. The reason that women earn less than men is they're less productive on average. I mean, I think men are taller and heavier than women on average, but there are some women who are much taller than you or I, or much heavier than you or I, and much stronger than you or I, if I can put you in that category. But on average, men are taller, heavier, and stronger than women. And what I was saying is, on average, men are more productive. And I said that In the 19th century, it was clear why, because a lot of jobs took upper body strength. The way we knocked down trees was with a saw or a hatchet. The way we dug holes in the ground for foundations of buildings with a pick and shovel. So it wouldn't be any surprise that men would be more productive when you have a lot of jobs that took that sort of a thing. But nowadays, the way we cut down trees is mechanically, with power saws, and the way we dig ditches or for pipelines or holes in the ground for foundations is with steam shovels, and women are just as capable of running heavy machinery as men. So we need a new explanation as to why women earn less than men. And the example I gave was marriage. Most marriages do not share the household responsibilities equally. Cooking, shopping, childcare, who gets up in the middle of the night when the baby is crying and diapers him, and who when the baby is sick, who worries more, and all that. And these tasks of cooking, cleaning, washing, shopping, usually the woman does the lion's share of those. And then I gave the case of Yo-Yo Ma, who was the best cellist on the planet, and what's his name, that the guy who runs the 100 yards in about 9.5 or something.
Gosh,
do you remember? What I said is, I forget the guy's name, and what I asked was, what's Yo-Yo Ma's time in the 100? Is it very good? No, it's probably not very good, because he's playing the cello all day, and in order to have a good time in the 100, in addition to having exquisite talent, you have to practice. And this other guy, is he a good cellist? Well, probably not, because he's spending all of his time running and doing weightlifting or whatever sprinters do. And I said that if you spend a lot of your time cooking and cleaning and shopping and child rearing, you're probably not going to be as good as an accountant as you otherwise would have been if you shared equally at the home.
And
that's why women earn less than men. And there was also the question of why do blacks earn less than whites, and I gave the same answer. It's productivity. It's a very mainstream view. And I heard nothing more about this. It was polite. There was no, I wasn't disinvited. I wasn't shouted down, as occurs all too often now with people like Milo Yiannopoulos or Ann Coulter or Charles Murray. And it was a very polite audience, and, people asked questions, and I answered, and everything was hunky-dory. And then what happened is that the president of the university, who is a scholar of these issues, said that, Walter Block is a disgrace. We shouldn't have invited him. He's all wrong. And, he's against university policy or something, as if a university could have a policy on something when a university any different professors. So that was where it hit the fan. And I was excoriated as a sexist, as a racist, not for the first time, but just one more time. So that was that episode. And this, I think, occurred in 2009. And then when I came back to my school here at Loyola, I found out that, maybe 15 professors signed a letter, an open letter saying, Block is a disgrace. So I gave a speech, trying to explain the economic facts of the matter in a calm, deliberate manner.
And I watched that speech. It was great.
Oh, thank you. So that was that episode.
Well, and when you gave that speech, you very clearly opened the floor, and there were a couple people who came up and asked questions, but all of your colleagues and all the people who criticized you, they didn't seem to want to show up to say anything there. And it's just, it amazes me how the escalation of it now, because now we've seen with people like Jordan Peterson out of Toronto University, who merely said that he wouldn't comply with some gender non-specific verbal policies. It didn't actually never ever happen. And now it's like, it's not just the academics, the colleagues and the other professors, they're walking hordes of people in to shout these people down. They're encouraging their students to silence people in a university setting. And it's just, Oh my gosh, it's so mind-boggling. Have you followed the Jordan Peterson event at all?
Yeah, before I get to him, I just wanted to add one more thing about the previous thing. There were about 15 professors at
Yeah,
Loyola
yeah.
that signed that I'm a no good Nick, I'm a sexist, racist, and only one of the the reason I gave the speech was because these people were condemning me for something that they had never heard.
Mm,
So what I did is I said, look, I'm not going to do the speech again verbatim because I always do it extemporaneous, but from notes, and I'll use the same notes and give the same speech. And only one of them showed up out of about 15. And this guy, he must have been drunk or a moron or something because he said, "Oh, I hate Jerry Ford or some." The president then, I forget who it was. He hates Republicans. And I said, I'm not a Republican either. So it was a disaster from their point of view. Now, with regard to Jordan Peterson, what it was at Toronto, they no longer want to refer to people as he or she.
hmm
Or man or women. They have all these new pronouns, "the" and "z" and I don't
Zer, yeah, yeah.
know. And Jordan said, forget it. I'm not going to do it. There's such a thing as free speech and academic freedom, and forget about it.
Yeah.
And the university administrators went apoplectic and said, well, you must be politically correct. You have to use inclusive language, and they're trying to have tell him what to say, which is a violation of free speech.
Well,
So.
yeah.
And happily, he took off. He's now on the lips of everyone, and he's a great hero. I'm not sure if he's a libertarian in everything.
No.
Maybe not on economics, I don't know. But on political correctness, he is magnificent. I'm a
Yeah.
big fan of his. I admire him. He's courageous. I think he's really great, especially in Canada, which is even more politically correct than the U.S.
Yeah, yeah, and they don't have free speech laws there, which I think a lot of people in the United States don't understand that this is something incredibly unique to here to the West, and not even the whole West has it. So, yeah, it's he is a really great guy, and actually, I feel like he's helped me out a lot personally because I've used the self-authoring suite that he promoted and or helped build, and it's really helped me. I really like it because it's a scientific approach to improving your life, and rather than just some rhetoric of manifest your destiny, just vote, No, address the problems in your life, and this is what we need to do in society too. We need to look and we need to address the problems, and my show is called The Anti-Partisan because I'm really tired of these partisan lines. I'm tired of the whole concept of a whole set of predictated thoughts, and while I do things like libertarianism really resonate with me, and I was an anarchist most of my life, truly practicing voluntarism, which is very hard to do, but I'm kind of tired of it. And this segs really great into what we want to talk about, which is the welfare state and recovery from this. And I don't think we need to go super in depth. I think a lot of people understand now. We've been incentivizing behavior and tendencies that we know are counterproductive to a healthy society. What's your take on the state of our welfare system as it stands now?
Well, welfare is highly problematic. I mean, it sounds good. Who could be against welfare? We all favor welfare. We want to have good welfare, but the welfare system takes money from rich Peter and gives to poor Paul, and reduces the incentives of both of them because the rich Peter says, well, if you're going to take half my money away or 3/4 of my money away, I'm not going to produce as much. And the poor recipient, Paul, says, well, if you're going to give me money for being poor, well, I'll be poor.
Yeah.
I mean, supply curves slope upward, and if you tell people we'll pay you to be poor by giving you money, well, then more people who are on the margin of getting a job or not will sit and put their feet up and watch their colored TV. So welfare is highly problematic. Now, there is this guy, Charles Murray, who I'm a big fan of, and I like him personally, but and he wrote a book on libertarianism, which was pretty good, but not excellent. But he's come out in favor of this universal payment plan where everyone gets 10 or 12 or 13,000 a year. And to his credit, he's saying we should do this instead of the welfare system. And one of his arguments is, the poverty pimp argument that for every $100 that goes into welfare, the poverty pimps grab up, 70% of it or $70. And they study it and they have a master's in social work and a PhD in social work, and very little gets to the poor. So what he's saying is, instead of having all of these programs, which I think, what was it? Thomas Sowell once calculated that if all the money in the welfare system went to the poor would have $73,000 per year per capita, which is not even lower middle class, but middle class. 73,000 is pretty decent.
Yeah.
So this universal payment that Charles Murray is favoring, he wants it instead of everything else. Well, rot's a rock, because it's not going to happen. What it'll do is it'll just be added to it. But let's suppose that we just had that, that every person got 12 or 13,000 a year. Is this a good idea? No, it's not a good idea pragmatically, and it's not a good idea deontologically. Deontologically, we have a word for it. When I take money from you who are rich and give me who are poor money against your will, it's called theft.
Yeah.
And that's what it is. Where do you get this money? Where do you get this 12 or 13,000 from per year? You get it at the force of a gun through taxes. So on a deontological or rights-based level, it's not a good idea.
Yeah.
Secondly,
and one of the problems with this is the partisanship, especially this major left-right polarization, because there's a large amount of people on both sides who have this view of, I don't mind. I don't mind if you take my money and the state uses it because I do approve of charity and I want to see impoverished people help, but they don't understand the civic participation being removed from that and putting it solely in the hands of the state. It's never going to be successful. It never has been. It's not going to be handed out right. So I think that is a big block, not only the economic institutions and the government, but a lot of people are more than willing to be taxed and don't care where that money's going,
Well, I think you're right. But the point is, we all want to help the impoverished. All decent people want to help the impoverished. The question is, what's the best way to do it? Is the best way to take a gun and compel other people to help them when it doesn't really even help them because it undermines their incentives to work for themselves? Or is the best way to help people free enterprise? And I think Adam Smith said it correctly when he wrote The Wealth of Nations, and he asked, well, why is it that some nations are wealthy and others aren't? And his answer was pretty much, if they have economic freedom, they'll be wealthy. And like in Venezuela, if they don't have economic freedom, even though they were once wealthy, they're not going to be wealthy anymore. So I think a much better way to help the poor is through the free enterprise system. And welfare, even and this limited basis that Charles Murray favors, is not part of the free enterprise system. It's anathema to the free enterprise system.
Yeah.
And these people who want to help the poor really are hurting the poor.
I agree completely, and this living wage concept, especially it seems like the last 3 or 4 years, it's been really getting picked up again. There's been a couple places trying it, and actually right up the road from me in Stockton, they are doing a living wage, I believe $500 a month to people under a certain economic level. And gosh, there's so many issues that are tied up into this that it's hard to break it all out. But like cryptocurrency, for example, right now the people who have been screaming for the last 40 years about how horrible a cashless society is going to be are scrambling to buy this cryptocurrency and make money on it. And it's like you kind of understand how that works with the cashless thing, right? But my point being, I think there's a larger agenda at work here also to remove our current currency systems, which is fiat currency anyways, and we all know it at this point. But I think people want to lean over to digital, and they want to lean over to living wages because it's so much easier to control, you know? Do you kind of think that we're being pushed in a direction like that as a society right now?
Well, I agree with you. The living wage is a disaster, and cryptocurrency is a way to get out from under governmental manipulation of the money supply. Let me deal with both of these since you raised both of these issues.
Yes,
On the living wage or the minimum wage. Our friend Bernie Sanders and Pocahontas, Elizabeth Warren, and the Democratic Party, and even the Republican Party are supporting the minimum wage law. And I think this is a disaster for the poor because, you know, they think that minimum wage law is like a floor under wages, and as you raise it, wages get higher. No. The minimum wage is a barrier over which you have to jump to get a job, and the higher the wage goes, the harder it is to get a job. Look, suppose my productivity level is $6 an hour. Namely, if you hire me, I'll wash your car, I'll shine your shoes, whatever you want, and your receipts go up by $6 an hour. I'm not a very productive person, but you have to pay me 15. Well, if you have to pay me 15 and all I can produce for you for every hour I'm on your shop floor is 6, well, you're going to lose $9 an hour. And if you hire me, idiot, you'll go broke.
Yeah.
So you're not going to hire me, and that's why the unemployment rate for unskilled workers and teenagers and young black kids is 50%. It's like quadruple what the unemployment rate is for adult white males. So the living wage is just a disaster. And as for currency, yes, the government... Look, we have to have money because money facilitates exchange. The example I sometimes use is I have a chicken and I want a pickle. And we have a thing called the double coincidence of wants. I have a chicken and I want a pickle, and now I have to find a guy who's got a pickle and wants a chicken?
Yeah.
No way. I mean, it's going to be very hard. So what I'll do is I'll trade my chicken in for something that everybody wants, salt or sugar or fish hooks or cowrie shells or whatever. And then I'll go and buy the pickles with that. And the guy, even though he doesn't want that salt or anything, he knows that some other people will accept it. So he'll give me pickles for that. And then we can consummate the trade. And if we can't trade, we're all going to die because we can't survive without cooperating with each other. And the only way to cooperate with each other is to trade with each other. Yeah. So now you get the problem, what should money be? Well, it started out as salt or sugar or something like that. And it can't be diamonds because you can't make change in diamonds, because if you do so, you lose a lot of the value of the diamond. It can't be bananas because bananas go bad after a day or two. It can't be cement because you need a lot of cement to consummate a trade for a motorcycle. You need tons and tons of cement. And what used to happen was gold and silver won the competition to be the money. And I think if we had allowed the market to go a little further, one of them would have beat the other, and we would have had gold, say. And I think that would have been wonderful. But then you get these people like Milton Friedman and other so-called libertarians who say, no, gold is no good. We have to have fiat currency. And the point is, fiat currency is under the control of government. Governments can now fight wars a lot easier by pumping up the money presses or through fractional reserve banking, whereas they can't print any more gold. So gold is sort of a leash on them, and they don't much like that. Cryptocurrency, I'm not a big fan of cryptocurrency because I think gold or whatever the market creates, and it could be platinum, who knows, I don't care. But cryptocurrency is better than fiat currency. The problem is the government is not going to allow that, just like they didn't allow government. They're going to pass a law saying if you got cryptocurrency, you're going to jail. That's my prognostication. So,
well, and I think, what I note to my listeners often is it doesn't matter who's controlling the currency. Go read the 16th Amendment. They can place taxes on income from whatever source derived. There's absolutely no limitation for them to tax cryptocurrency if Congress agrees upon it. I mean, would you say that's correct?
Well, I'm not a constitutional lawyer, and the way the Supreme Court interprets the Constitution is not ordinarily in a very free market way. There are people that have gone to jail. Vivian Kellums or Irwin Schiff have gone to jail thinking that the income tax was illegitimate, and they refused to pay, and they went to jail. So I think the reality is that, if you refuse to pay your taxes, income taxes including,
Well, they'll
you're not
send
going to
people
have
with
to.
machine guns to get you. Like,
Yeah, precisely.
that's how
So
it
I think
is.
the solution is sort of what you and I are now doing.
Mm-hmm.
We're promoting liberty by discussing it, maybe write a book, give a speech, whatever, and change the hearts and minds of the people. I mean, we don't need to have 50% of the population be libertarian. If 20% of the people were staunch libertarians, we would have peaceful changes.
Yeah.
But and the only way I think to do that is, Ron Paul runs for office. Murray Rothbard writes a book. The Mises Institute does great work. I do good work at Loyola. You're doing good work here with your blog and your interviews. So I think if we keep doing that, we'll be in a better position than if we don't do those things.
I surely hope so, and that's what I'm working towards. My website is called nopartysystem.com, and of course I'm the Anti-partisan as my little internet handle here. And my big point to everybody, and my big point to this conversation too, would be I don't believe anything's going to change while Democrats and Republicans hold our seats of power. These people have learned far too efficiently how to manipulate us, and it seems apparent to me that the best you could say is they have an agreement to share power with only each other at this point, and that's really going to define them as a single party to me in the end. So I think any solution starts with removing Democrats and Republicans, and these are the people who've sold our government out from under us. We can't pick sides anymore. Now that's just my opinion. What's your take on that?
Well, I agree with you 9/10,
Yeah.
but there are exceptions. I mean, Justin Amash is very good. Ron Paul is a Republican. He was a Republican congressional congressman. Rand Paul is now a senator, probably the most libertarian senator we've ever had. So I agree with you roughly. But
Well,
I think you all acknowledge
these
that.
gentlemen can always go back to the Libertarian Party or run on independent tickets. Or what I would love to see is candidates who were not afraid to run standalone with no partisan affiliation whatsoever.
Yeah, but to get realistic, when Saint Ron Paul ran on the Libertarian candidate as a Libertarian candidate, he got, I don't know, the usual 1% or maybe 1.5%, something like that. When he ran as a Republican, I mean, if you had to pick the two people who, more than any other two people, converted more people to libertarianism than anyone else, you'd have to pick Ayn Rand, a novelist, philosopher, and Ron Paul. And Ron Paul ran as a Republican. So Republicans can't be all bad. And the idea, I mean, I'm also a fan of the Libertarian Party. In the most recent election, by the way, I supported Donald Trump vis-a-vis Hillary. Not because I really liked Donald, but I hated Hillary.
Yeah, which is why, Donald didn't win. Hillary lost. That was the big point of our election.
Okay, that's a good way to put it. I started this group with several colleagues, Libertarians for Donald, and then I started another group with colleagues, Scholars for Trump, because Libertarians for Trump and Scholars for Trump. Libertarians for Trump got about 5,000 signatures. Scholars for Trump, we started that because the left-wing media was saying that only idiots would, rednecks would vote for Donald. So I got 150 people with PhDs or law degrees or medical degrees to sign up. So I favored him. And my idea was, I also am a supporter of the Libertarian Party. And even though Gary Johnson wasn't, he was no Ron Paul, he was no Murray Rothbard, what the heck, he was pretty good. And what I said is, if you live in a blue state like California or in a red state like Louisiana, vote for Gary Johnson, because Hillary's going to win in California and Donald's going to win in Louisiana, and you're not helping anyone by giving Donald another vote. On the other hand, if you live in a purple state where it's going to be close between Donald and Hillary, well, then vote for Donald. So I figured we could have our cake and eat it. we could help the Libertarian Party, and I'm a fan of the Libertarian Party. I'm an activist in the LP,
Yeah.
and also we wouldn't get crooked Hillary.
Yeah.
So that was my take on that. But so I sort of go 3/4 of the way toward you, but not all the way, because there are some good Republicans, and we owe, I don't know, half of all libertarians to Ron Paul, and not from Ron Paul running for the LP, but for Ron Paul running as a congressman and then running for president.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And, of course, Ron Paul is just an amazing man. His biggest strength is you just can't phase him. You can't ask Ron Paul a bad faith question because he will just pound it out of the park and keep going, which is amazing. And, when he ran on the Republican ticket, I did vote for him. And it was after that I came to this decision in my own life that I will never again support anybody with a D or an R next to their name for any reason whatsoever. This
why not?
lesser evil paradigm is what's really.
But suppose, look, Ron is going to be a young, in the year 2020, Ron will be a young 84, and he's in good shape. He rides a bicycle in the Texas heat. Suppose Ron ran for president in 2020, and he had Rand as his vice president. I would find it hard not to vote for him. And I'm sure, and what I would hope is that the LP, instead of nominating someone other than Ron and Rand, would say, we support Ron and Rand.
Yeah.
And I don't see, why would you be against that?
Well, to honestly answer that question, because I feel that the GOP and the Democratic Party are so big and have so much influence as it is, that even if you put somebody in those seats, they will be stymied the whole way. They will have to fight their own party the whole way. Now, I think with Trump, we have a really unique situation, because he said, he let it be known in the beginning, if the Republicans didn't give him the ticket, he would run as something else. He admitted it right off. And he really forced their hand into it. And now they're in a situation where I think most of them are just holding on for dear life every time he tweets, But
well said.
Maybe I will be proven wrong by Trump's presidency, but I doubt it. I don't think there's anything he can really do to stop the partisanship and the manipulation, the agreement to share power that these two groups have. And I think for the most part, they're just going to hunker down, wait for 8 years, because we're going to get him again, and then try to carry on their agenda. Now, a deeper part of me, the part with my tinfoil hat, says that Trump was allowed to get into office because he supports an agenda that a globalist economic cartel wants right now. And I don't know, Hillary would have supported much of the same. I don't know how you can even call her liberal. She's neocon all the way. She's a rhino in a donkey suit, So I don't know. I really don't know what to think about the whole situation. But I've decided I'm not going to choose lesser evil anymore. I'm gonna pick what I like, what's best to me. And this year, I didn't see anything I liked. I wrote in no confidence on my absentee ballot, because that's what I have in our government and our electoral system. I have no confidence whatsoever. And I would love to start that as a trend for people. I don't think it could be ignored at a certain point. Of course, my little single point of doing it, but when 3 million, 5 million, 10 million people are writing no confidence on their ballots, it has to be taken notice,
Well, I'm a fan of the lesser of two evils. Look, suppose I came up with a gun against you. I've got a gun here, and I said, I'll give me your wallet or I'll shoot you. And if I were you, I'd give me the wallet, because that's the lesser of two evils.
Well, and I mean, put in context, and this is like what we were saying about the IRS too. Hey, pay them. It doesn't matter what you think about taxes; they're going to come and get you.
Right? Yeah. So we're accepting the lesser of two evils. I mean, the other example I use is suppose we're a bunch of slaves on the plantation, and there are two overseers, Overseer Goody and Overseer Batty. Overseer Baddie beats the crap out of us every day. Overseer Goody only beats us up once a month. And now the master, the owner of us slaves, says we can vote for Overseer Goody or Overseer Baddie. I'm voting for Goody. It doesn't mean I like slavery. I'm obviously opposed to slavery. I don't think it's a just system, slightly. But
you're choosing the lesser of the evils in front of you that will ultimately have the most benefit to your life and your continued existence. And I can't disagree with it. I can't say I would do anything different in those circumstances, but I feel like that very mentality is what is being used to push us to this point. And maybe let's bring it back to the welfare thing, because this is a unique situation in this regard, or not unique, but this is part of it. It's a situation that has been driven so equally by the worst intentions and the best intentions, and now we've come to a point where it's like, what do we really do? Do we really just shut it off and let the free market take over? Are we going to experience some massive blowback from doing that?
Well, the way I would answer this, I would answer it with two black leaders. One I like and the other I didn't much like. And one was Malcolm X and the other was Martin Luther King. And I'm much more of a fan of Malcolm X than I am of Martin Luther King.
Me too.
And Malcolm X preached initiative, and black people should have businesses, and he would open Shabazz bakeries and laundries and this and that and the other. And he wanted to make blacks into entrepreneurs, which I think is marvelous. Whereas Martin Luther King was more of a socialist, and he was more, we have better welfare and we should have more unions and stuff like that. So I think that Malcolm was almost a libertarian in many ways, not in every way, whereas Martin Luther King was very much different from us libertarians. So I favor initiative, and I'm against welfare. I think welfare undermines the benefit, the supposed beneficiaries of it. So I certainly agree with you that the welfare system is a very bad thing.
Yeah. And I agree completely. I think most people do. I think most people are stuck in this position, though. We've painted ourselves in a corner because, the communities that are receiving the largest amount of these welfare support are also the communities with the highest violent crime rates and the lowest education rates. And I think what most people fear is you cut it off and those problems are going to become even more exasperated. We're going to see even more crime. And ultimately, the only real response to that is going to be an authoritarian response from the state, which we've seen how that works out. We've seen where that's going now. Let me ask you this. What about, since we seem to be incentivizing poor or non-productive behavior, what about putting our welfare budget to incentivizing good behavior? Giving people money to graduate school, from high school. Giving families money for being together, for having the mother and father and everyone in the home. I mean, if we're going to have a welfare system, what about basing it on those values that we promote in our society and we know to be more healthy?
Well, we're against the welfare system deontologically because it's massive theft. It's taking money from people against their will. So we would oppose it just on that basis. But I think you're making a very interesting mental experiment. Suppose we have to have welfare. And right now, the way the welfare system works, it works against families. If there's a man in the house, you lose your welfare. Charles Murray, even though I criticized him before, he wrote a magnificent book, Losing Ground. And what he said is that up until about 1965, welfare was very niggardly, very cheapskatey, hardly gave any money to people. And then in 65, with LBJ's, what was it, the Great Society or something like that, welfare really took off. And before that, the idea is that if you're a young girl and you get pregnant in the 50s, you were a disgrace.
Yeah.
You had to go to Aunt Mary and have the baby and give it up for adoption, because if you had a baby without a husband, you were just horrible. And then what happened after 1965, 1970, 1980 was that the welfare system undermined these social mores. And now you have high school classes of girls that have babies, and it's no longer seen as something wrong. And I think, what is it? 75% of black kids are now from non-intact families, and it's not even a black-white thing. The reason it impacts blacks more is because they're more poor and they're more able to qualify for welfare. But in Sweden, they're having a very similar problem, and most Swedes are white, and you're having a lot of children without marriage. And even in the United States, it used to be for a white girl to have a baby without a husband, 1 or 2%, and now it's creeping up into the teens and maybe even in the 20s, where even white kids now are from non-intact families. And the whole point is you need a father in the house to sort of train, especially young men, not so much young girls, but young men, not to be criminals and to be respectful, etc. And we just don't have that. The male has disappeared from the family. It's sort of a feminist ideal, the female-headed household, and there's no man in the house, and it's an absolute disaster.
Yeah, I agree completely. And it's really odd because, while I've never been into the partisan politics, I think I'm like a lot of other people where in the last 10 years, my views have really shifted on a lot of these things. I really used to kind of buy into this idea that that these were racially motivated discrepancies and differences in our society, and now I don't see it the same. I see a lot of people. I don't see anyone behaving right on any side. But when it comes to the low socioeconomic communities, and I mean, just to frankly say it, Negroes in America, we have a real problem of entitlement that nobody wants to address. And if you do address it, you're, of course, eviscerated as some sort of a racist,
Yeah. Another problem is drug laws. During prohibition of alcohol in the 30s, it was young Italian men shooting each other over alcohol turf and distilleries or whatever, bathtub gin. Now it's young black men. I live in New Orleans, and pretty much every weekend there are 5 or 10, maybe that's an exaggeration, young black men shooting each other. And they might be shooting each other for other reasons also, but one of the big reasons is the drug thing. Yeah. And it's not just marijuana, because happily we're legalizing marijuana in about 8 states, and not just for medicinal purposes, but for recreational too. Yeah. But we've got to go in that direction for cocaine and heroin and this and that and the other. And if we did, then these young black men would stop shooting each other over drug turf, because if you wanted heroin, you'd go to the pharmacy, or you'd go to the, to the heroin store.
Yeah. Well, and this is something I've written and talked about, that I think the solution is we need to decriminalize everything, and we need to take it all and put it into stores where that's the only thing you can buy. Because right now, you walk into a liquor store and there's toys and candy on the shelves next to cigarettes and alcohol. And it's like, how can we really claim that we're trying to, not promote this use and behavior among children? That I'm kind of the mind, if we really want to solve this, don't even put it in places where kids can see it. You take it and put it in stores all by itself, where there's no candy, no sodas, no anything. This is why you buy your heroin and your beer and your marijuana if you want it.
Well, I agree with you that we should prohibit alcohol, and we should prohibit all sorts of drugs for children. But for adults, if children are a very small part of the market, and most people, would agree that children shouldn't have access to alcohol or drugs or a lot of things like that. But if we legalized it for adults, I personally oppose the use of things like alcohol, excessive alcohol or heroin. I don't use heroin. I wouldn't want my kids to use heroin. I don't think anyone should use heroin except, for maybe medicinal purposes, morphine, stuff like that. Yeah. But so I'm not against putting candy near beer or candy, because adults like candy too, right? But but I certainly agree with you that children should be very seriously. Anyone who's selling any of this stuff to children should be pay a very heavy penalty.
Accountable. Yeah, yeah. So, well, we've kind of gone a little bit adrift and far afield, which is great. I could talk to you for days on so many issues, and actually, I'm really looking forward to Defending 3. I caught a little excerpt of it in a recent article of yours the other day, defending the anti-Semite, and I'm so counterculture, anti-conformist that excites me. I want to see who else you can defend. It's
Well, look,
absolutely
I'm
wonderful.
not against all Jews. There are some Jews who are good guys,
Yeah,
but most Jewish people, and I'm Jewish myself, are commies, socialists, feminists, progressives, Democrats, lefties. They're horrible. So why can't we oppose this? I mean, you don't to be an anti-Semite, you don't have to oppose every last Jew.
yeah,
Just like the KKK doesn't hate every black. They like Uncle Toms who are respectful or
sure.
whatever. They just don't like most most blacks. Well, I don't like most Jews. Most Jews are horrible on political economy. They're the leaders of every issue in political economy that is horrible. So yes, I'm going to defend the anti-Semite in Defending 3.
That's great. I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here and talk with me today, Professor Block.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, and I look forward to being on your show again.
Great. And I'll get you a link out as soon as I have it uploaded.
Great.
All
Take
right,
care.
have a great one. Well,
Bye.
thank you everybody for tuning in to the Anti-Partisan. Had a great time talking to Professor Block, and give us some comments. Let us know what's going on. Be sure to click the like and the subscribe button, and the little bell right next to the subscribe. That's how you'll get the notifications on our live shows. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon.